adamantly opposed to it because there's so much pressure on the council side to do it.
Good evening. I'd like to call this city council meeting to order April 21st, 2025, 5:30 p.m. I want to inform the public about the location of the Open Meetings Act posted in the council chambers and accessible to all members of the public. At this moment, we'll offer a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Granquist.
Here.
Arns.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Beckman. Here. Jensen. Langy.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here. All right. Let's move on to recommended actions. Need approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All right, a motion a second, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Now I need a motion to approve the full agenda.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
A motion a second, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right, under special presentations, looks like everybody's here for Arbor Day. Is that what this is so busy for? All right. Okay, I'll read the Arbor Day proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was to be observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lowering our heating and cooling costs, moderating temperature, cleaning air, producing oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance economic vitality of our business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore I, Shane Clausen, Mayor of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the City of Norfolk, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day by supporting efforts to protect trees and woodlands, planting and caring for trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of the future generations, and participating in a tree planting opportunity on their property or in their neighborhood. Do we have anybody here tonight to receive this award? All right, yeah, come forward and maybe make a statement and I'll come out there, and if you want to, otherwise let us come out there. Okay.
Why is he not in this? Works for me. I'm gonna find out.
Okay, we're on to the public hearing and related action portion of our meeting. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing to consider a blighted and substandard declaration for the area referred to as North State Highway 35 and Benjamin Avenue redevelopment area. We'll have some discussion on this. Candace, you can start off, I suppose.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am going to introduce this project, and then Kelby Herman, who commissioned the actual study, has with him here the consultants that actually did the study, so they'll be able to provide in-depth understanding of how they conducted the study and what their conclusions were. I just thought to kind of set the stage, I would go through a quick history of this project since it has been some time since we've moved through this. So this project was first introduced to the city on January 16th, 2024 in a subcommittee. Kelby had shared a little bit about his intentions and was looking at a parcel to move forward with a housing development. When a developer wants to study an area that is not currently blighted and substandard, for which they want to use tax increment financing, we ask that developer to take upon themselves the cost to conduct that study. The city typically pays for large swaths that we want to focus in on redevelopment, but when it's a project-specific situation, we ask the developer to take on those costs and hire that out. So they did come back on March 18th to subcommittee and then moved it forward to the city council on June 17th. The city council then passed a resolution and it was forwarded to the planning commission. On July 16th, the planning commission held a public hearing and voted 6-1 to recommend declaring the area blighted and substandard. After that, there was a project halt and there was some work done to do some community outreach, neighborhood outreach. Kelby took that upon himself. I know they had a meeting at the library, and I know that there were questions that needed to be answered around the drainage. So that was kind of one of the concerns that we heard emerge out of the various meetings that were held. And that's something that staff is working alongside the developer on as we move through this process. So right now, tonight, this is actually the final step in the declaration of the blight and substandard study. So your vote tonight would effectively allow this area to be declared blighted and substandard. And then we do expect the developer to come forward with an application for tax increment financing. So is there any questions that I can answer for you, or would you like me to, or would we like to invite Kelby and his team up to answer questions specific to the study?
I think we just need to make it very clear that we're talking about a blighted and substandard tonight, and we're not talking about TIF. So when we do have people coming forward, try to keep your topic or your what you're discussing about the blight and standard part of it, because we will have continuing conversation in other city council meetings about the TIF application that'll go along with it.
Yes, once that TIF application comes forward, we'll go through a whole redevelopment plan process. And that involves another series of meetings and public hearings where people can make comment on that project specifically. But you're right, Shane, this is about or you're right, Mayor, this is about the blight study that's before you.
Good afternoon, evening. Certainly hope that's not my car that's being stolen right now. My name is Bobby Pettit. I'm a certified planner. I'm the owner of 5 Rural Planning in Kearney, Nebraska.
1 second. Whoever has his car yellow MH outside is the one going on.
Okay. I started 5 Rural in 2018, and we focus on community planning and economic development consulting in rural Nebraska and Kansas. Prior to that, I've worked in some form or facet in community and regional planning in Nebraska since the early 2000s. So our firm was engaged by Kelby to perform the blight study. To be clear, we don't come up with our criteria for the blight study. The criteria to declare something as blighted and substandard is set forth in community redevelopment law, and we're just hired to go through the criteria and say whether or not it exists. We would have gone through it more in depth with the Planning Commission last summer, A quick review of the study document is first we have to identify if there is any combination of substandard criteria. I'm not an attorney, but I've hung around them long enough to know that combination means one or more. And we have 3 substandard factors that are present. So first we have to find any combination of substandard factors. And then we have to go on to the blighted area. And if that seems redundant, that is also not my fault. You can call your senator because they're the ones that call it blighted and substandard. In the blight criteria, we have to do 10 subjective factors and 5 objective factors that we have to look at. I have teenagers right now, so I'm very clear on what subjective is. Subjective means you could debate it more than you could with objective. Objective is focused on numbers. In the subjective, of the 10 that we look at, again, we have to find any combination, so at least 2. And then in the objective factors, we have to find the presence of at least 1. So on the study on page 10, we list out the substandard factors that we have to review. I said that we need any combination. We document the presence of 3 different factors: dilapidation, deterioration, and age or obsolescence. Those were the 3 substandard factors that we found, that we documented. And then on page 17 of the study is our blight conclusion. On the subjective criteria, in order to be declared as a blighted area, we needed any combination of subjective, so 1 or more. We found 4 of them. And then on the objective factors, we needed to find at least 1 of the 5 that are offered up by community redevelopment law, and we documented the presence of 2. So our conclusion of the blight and substandard study is that the criteria does exist in order to legally declare this a blighted and substandard area in accordance with Nebraska community redevelopment law. I can go into it in depth. I'm happy to do that. I don't know if that's what you'd like me to do.
I think for everybody in the crowd, it'd be nice to hear that, at least a summary of it.
Okay, Corey, Mr. Hildebrand. I'm happy to do it. I love talking about this stuff. So if we go into the substandard factors on the topic of dilapidation, we had to find dilapidation or deterioration, so we did them both. So on page 6 of the study is where we talk about dilapidation and deterioration. We used to drive up and down the street and make a judgment of the properties, but now we utilize the county assessor's data. So we are able to get the information from Madison County Assessor. I think that's the best form of data because, as you know, revenue is based on the assessment of a property, and so it's going to be the very best case scenario as far as what the property condition is. And according to the Madison County Assessor, 82% of the structures that are located in this area, which most of them are along the highway, were considered to be below normal. So when you look at an assessor's rating table, you would see that below normal would meet the same definition of dilapidation or deterioration. There is an older trailer mobile home park in this area, and so a lot of those mobile homes are pretty aged, so that's kind of where that came from. The single family houses along that area too are also aged. And then on the age of structures, so community redevelopment law, their standard is 40 years old. So if something's older than 40 years old, it's considered aged. I've been struggling with this because I was born in 1983. So just last year, I became an age structure eligible for community redevelopment law. I guess the average age of the structures in this area is 58 years old. And again, we're able to get an accurate age because we utilize the Madison County Assessor. So this is not like census estimates that we're using. This is what is in the assessor's data. 0 of the structures in this area, in the south part of this area, were built before 1983. The other criteria, so those were 3 factors: deterioration, dilapidation, and age or obsolescence. The other 3 factors in the substandard area are conditions that endanger life or property by fire and other causes, inadequate provision for ventilation, light, air, sanitation, high density of population, or overcrowding. This might surprise you, but working in rural Nebraska and Kansas, I have yet to prove evidence of high density of population or overcrowding. So We had to find at least 2, or we needed to document at least 2, and we documented at least 3 substandard factors. Moving into the blight criteria, so there's 10 subjective factors that community redevelopment law gives us to look at, that's on the list, and then 5 objective factors. So in the 10 subjective factors, the first one is substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures. So if we go back to the chart that I showed you, or the numbers that I mentioned on the substandard, 82% of the structures in this area would be considered below normal. So we would say that's a substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures. Same goes with the second one, deterioration of site or other improvements. Again, because over half of the personal property in this area is considered below normal, then we would say that there's significant deterioration of site or other improvements. Existence, the third criteria is existence of defective or inadequate street layout. So on page 12 of the study, we highlight a parcel, parcel ID number 590160990 does not have adequate right-of-way access. And so we reference Nebraska Revised Statute 19-916, which says that by today's standards, you cannot plat a piece of land without having public right-of-way access. So if you notice on that parcel, if you zoom out on that parcel, there is no way to access that parcel from a public street unless you cross someone else's private property. And so I come across this a lot working in rural Nebraska and working on the edge of communities. I come across a lot of parcels that it is like, how did that get there? So you guys are probably familiar enough these days with annexation that the manner in which this piece of ground was platted with no public right-of-way access, that would be obsolete by today's standards. So we call that obsolete platting or improper subdivision. The next criteria is insanitary or unsafe conditions, which we did not find. The next one we grouped together faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequacy, accessibility, or usefulness. So to do this one, I paid special attention to the northern portion of the redevelopment area that's not developed. When we're done today, if you choose to declare this area as blighted and substandard, and if I work around this area again, I will not use the term blighted and substandard. I think that's unfortunate wording, but I don't have enough time in my life to go down to Lincoln and try to convince them to change the wording. But what I would really say is this piece of ground is underdeveloped, and a lot of greater Nebraska, municipal Nebraska that I've been a part of as declaring as blighted and substandard, it's really underdeveloped land. Even if it's a piece of undeveloped land, there's some reason that it's not developed, something is in the way. And being in Nebraska, we are extremely flat and extremely steep. If you were developing, so I have my master's in planning. I went to the university, took lots of courses in public policy and public input and people's feelings, but what I really needed to know is that stuff has to flow downhill, right? It's really hard to develop or put houses in if the stuff cannot flow downhill. So it's the sanitary and the stormwater that makes it actually pretty hard to develop in greater Nebraska. So we have that here. So on page 13 of the study, to do this, I work with Dr. Paul Berger, and he is a geography professor at UNK, and then he specializes in special studies like this. And so he has taken the entire development area and broke it up into 10 meter squares and given me the grade of those squares. So quick engineering lesson, 0 to 2% grade is not very developer friendly. It's not very cheap to develop when something is that flat. 2 to 8% is ideal, and anything greater than 8% is really hard to develop because it's so steep. So 41% of this area is at a 0 to 2% grade. And so there will be a lot of investment that has to take place in moving dirt, adequately sizing the sanitary and the stormwater, and then also making sure that we have a good stormwater drainage. So remember, I said that everything has to flow downhill. So in order to make this piece of ground work, we're going to have to create, I'm not going to, but somebody is going to have to create a situation where the stuff can flow downhill, either with a lot of dirt work, so it can happen by gravity, or with lift stations, which are also not cheap to put in or maintain. So we said that faulty lot layout in relation to adequacy and usefulness is present in this area. Diversity of ownership is not a factor. Tax, that was the next criteria. Criteria after that was tax or special assessment, delinquency exceeding the fair value of the land, not an issue here. Defective or unusual conditions of title, not an issue. Existence of conditions that endanger life or property by fire and other causes. In this area, so I'm on page 14, we are showing where the floodplain flows right through the middle of this area. When I started my career, I just stayed away from anything that was floodplain, but I'm from Kearney. Most of Yanni development, Eunice development is actually on a floodplain, and a lot of those buildings have just been elevated because of the floodplain, and that is actually a tax increment finding. That's a TIF eligible expense to address the fact that we'll be working with floodplain here. So I do say the existence of conditions that endanger life or property by fire and other causes. The other causes is the presence of the floodplain in the area. So that gets us to the end. That was the list of 10 subjective factors. Now I'm in the objective factors. Those are more numerical focused. Number one, unemployment in the redevelopment area is at least 125% of the state or national average. Also have never been able to prove that one in Nebraska. Number two, the average age of the residential structures, there it is at least 40 years. So the average age of the structures here is 58 years old, and no structure in this area was actually built before 1983. The next one, more than half of the plotted and subdivided area is unimproved land that has been within the city for 40 years. That's not an issue. The next one, the per capita income of the area is lower than the average per capita. I've never been able to use this one just because I'm in rural Nebraska, and we're not going to measure per capita income with this view of households. The last one on page 16 then is the proposed redevelopment area has had either stable or decreasing population based on the last two decennial censuses. So that would be the 2010 census and the 2020 census. The block groups got reorganized between 2010 and 2020. So we took the combined population of the block groups in this area in 2010, which was 32. And then actually in 2020, the block group got much bigger. So we just have one block group. But in that block group, in a much bigger area, we only have 37 people. So where it says either stable or decreasing population, because we had to take a bigger chunk of land to find the 2020 census comparable to the 2010 block group count, and we only found an increase in 5 residents, we would say that this area has a stable population based on the last two decennial census. So 5 residents in 10 years, we would call that stable. So then back to page 17, just to review, we had 10 blight subjective criteria that were on the list. Substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures was the first one. Faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequacy, accessibility, or usefulness, that was the second one. Improper subdivision or obsolete platting, that was the third. Existence of conditions that endanger life or property by fire and other causes, with the other cause being flood, that was the fourth. So we needed at least 2 subjective criteria, and we found 4. On the objective factors, the 2 that we documented were the average age of the residential units or commercial units in the area is at least 40 years, and the area has had either stable or decreasing population based on the last 2 decennial census. So that was the blight criteria. So we did document the minimum, actually more than the minimum criteria for the blight declaration, and also more than the minimum criteria for the substandard declaration. Good recap.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I think you should go to Lincoln and get them to change the designation from blighted substandard to underdeveloped, because I think you would have a winner across the board with that one, just
I
saying.
think it would be a big help. I really do.
Yeah.
It definitely would.
Are you done with me?
Yeah, that's fine. A little bit about tonight, as we go through the discussion, when you come up, please state your name and sign in, so I don't have to interrupt you right during when you're trying to speak. And then we'll be holding everyone to 5 minutes, unless you're a presenter. And then, what? 2 minutes? Okay. we'll start with 5. We'll see how late we move. And then, obviously, if you're asked questions during that time frame, that'll change it a little bit. But just to let everybody know, that's how we're going to be kind of handling this meeting tonight, if there's a lot of people who want to come and talk about this tonight. So with that said, anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kelby Herman, 1603 Miles Drive, Norfolk, Nebraska, the potential developer for this project. I have a quick summary of some details that have been addressed throughout the project. I'll start with that before we go too far in some of the other details. Shall I wait briefly? No? Corey? No? Proceed. The East Benjamin development is a 60-acre mixed-type housing development with 2 commercial service lots. The development plans are to construct approximately 221 R1/R2 housing units and 280 R3 multifamily units and 2 commercial lots. The property is located just south of the Northeast Community College Ag Complex. Over the past 12 to 18 months, I've worked with neighbors, city staff, community leaders to get the project where it is today. I hosted a neighborhood meeting last summer to solicit feedback from the neighborhood, and I have also had numerous phone calls, texts, messages, and meetings at the property to discuss different facets of the development. It has been my goal to reach out to the neighborhood and provide a seamless transition between the new development and existing homes that have been built in the last few years. These meetings have come up with solutions for many of the concerns expressed. I have designed a 50-foot buffer zone adjacent to the backyards of the neighboring homes on the west side of my development. These 50 by 95 approximately foot parcels will be given to the property owners at no charge to be used as a no-build green space. This will provide an unprecedented buffer between existing R1 and new R1 similar construction. I have also worked closely with the city engineering staff, private engineers, and city leaders to provide a plan to address the stormwater runoff. As required by state and local code, I will retain my newly created runoff in a dedicated retention area on my property. These areas will be designed by a private engineer and be approved by the city's engineering professionals. We have discussed a long-term concept for a regional retention facility in the area, and potential TIF dollars could possibly be used to address some of these existing drainage issues. That will potentially reduce the stress on the existing drainage ways. As my project evolves, city staff, myself, private engineers, and the NRD will continue to work together to move the regional retention concept along in an effort to plan for future growth in this part of the community. This type of collaboration is typical in growing areas in all communities. There was a concern about the capacity of the downstream sewage lift station. Engineering professionals have researched this concern and have determined that the current lift station has more than enough capacity to handle the additional incremental growth of this development. This lift station in question has been on the city infrastructure upgrade plan for several years, from what I understand. TIF funds could possibly be used for potential future upgrades to this structure, and Mr. Ramos can address this in more detail if necessary. Part of the property is in a low-impact flood zone, as we saw on the blight study. Also, as mentioned in the blight study, the elevation of the property's topography is not cost-effective for development without TIF. We have also learned that we will need to work with the city to address the water pressure at the east end of the property for my development needs and for future water needs further east of my property. I would be open to answer questions that the council might have at this time before I move forward with any other comment that deviates from the blight study topic.
This is about the blight study. Could you tell me, what was the property used before you're planning to develop it?
The property was a undeveloped parcel.
What was it used for? Farming?
Agriculture.
Agriculture.
Yep.
Is there any buildings or structures on that property?
Not on that particular parcel.
Why did you choose to go down the highway and not go to the backyard behind the row of trees?
A lot of times when blight studies are done and development is done in all communities, you don't just want to pick one single parcel and kind of pigeonhole yourself into one area. You want to look at the grand scheme of development through that corridor of town. And that's the reason we included that South 35 corridor, because at some point when R1, R2, R3 are developed, and then some light commercial on the Benjamin 35 corner, there's going to be some overflow development along 35. And I see Norfolk growing that direction. That's one of the best areas to develop is East Norfolk. We have the college that has continued growth over the years, and they have done a great job. So I think it would have been short-sighted not to include those areas along Highway 35 that need redevelopment. And one of the things in a blight study, there are always some areas that are contained in a blight. I would say typically there are some areas contained in a blight study that aren't necessarily applicable to the particular project being that is in mind. But one of the nice things, the city of Norfolk, it might have been a couple of years ago, and somebody maybe can speak to this, they have approved the micro-TIF ordinance. So people with smaller lots in any blighted area in Norfolk can utilize the benefits of the blight study in their area and utilize the micro-TIF process that I believe it's a $1.6 million project and below, and that's a $50 fee and like a 2-page application to be able to have maybe some light commercial in that vacant lot that doesn't have access, or other things. As Norfolk grows, we need to think past this project, and as this project develops over the next 7 or 8 years, what other opportunities are going to be available in that area, and how can we continue to expand Norfolk and grow it responsibly. Too often we may spot blight or we spot zone, and we don't look at the whole future and maybe the 100-year projection of where Norfolk is going to go. And in the 20-year projection of Norfolk, and with that thoroughfare there being Highway 35, the way it's designed, there will be potential options for whether it's commercial or multifamily or whatnot. And maybe the existing owners don't want to do that, but that's something that we have to look for. One of the things as leaders in the community, like I mentioned, we need to look at the impact, not just for the next 7 years or 8 years potentially of my project, but we need to look at the next 15 to 20 to 100 years and be looking at the impact of this blight study and this project over that time span, and not such a narrow window of time. So I appreciate your question on that. Anybody else?
Yeah, Kelby, I do have a question for you. You indicated you do have a revised plan that has that retention pond
Yes.
on the property. Just based on the map that is up there right now, where would that pond be?
It would, do we have a pointer? It would be right, Val, right arrow that way. Yep. Right along the south edge. The topography of the property, that's the low spot where it actually runs into that floodway. So what I've been working with engineering on is the retention would be in the lowest spot of the property, not on the west side, but basically where Val's arrow is and further east. And there will also be, here's a drawing of it. I'll send a couple, so at least print a few copies. Where that. So what the plan for the retention pond is, I've worked with Mr. Ramus in engineering, and what we'll do is we'll design that retention pond kind of along that south tree line, and some towards the southeast corner as shown on my drawing, and we'll utilize some buildable lots and we'll still plat those lots. And at some point in the future, as the city continues to work with the NRD and other environmental professionals in the grand scheme of the area retention, then when that comes to fruition, then those 7 or 8 or 10 lots, whatever need to be used currently for retention, can be filled back in with the soil that's taken from digging the new regional retention, and then those lots can be buildable lots at some point in the future. If we never get to the point where we come to an agreement on regional retention, I've done my job legally with the design, and the engineers have enforced it where we have sufficient retention on site to handle the runoff for my development.
Kelby, I got one question, just if you could address that. Your drainage and retention pond, what organizations does that all have to pass? I mean, because you have to meet minimum criteria to have the drainage and the retention pond.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think if I could defer to Steve Ramus of engineering and maybe address codes or design criteria.
Yep. So it goes through our engineering department. We have a drainage design criteria manual that covers the requirements for that within our community. So it does go outside of our engineering department.
And this does meet the criteria of,
Right now, they haven't designed anything, but.
okay, but in the design stage, it will meet the
Yes.
criteria?
Yes, correct.
I've done 31 other subdivisions in different communities throughout Nebraska, so this isn't my first rodeo per se, but all of the, I certainly understand drainage and retention and the requirements, and I understand it enough that I hire engineers that design it to meet the criteria and make sure it works properly. And that's one of the challenges as a developer, and one of the reasons we've been talking about this regional retention area. Too often cities utilize, I would say, prime developable property for a retention area, when we could maybe use less prime or maybe low ground or lower swamp ground for retention areas, and save the prime real estate for development. You look at every Walmart or every Menards throughout Nebraska, and it's built in a prime area, and you have this pond full of cattails. So if we would have been thinking of that 20 years ago, we would have piped that water somewhere in a less prime area opposed to along the highway, and utilize that prime property for future development and property tax values for our community. So I think the city's done a good job in thinking outside the box with the regional retention. It's just gonna take a little bit of time to get get all those details worked out. But in the meantime, I am required to follow the state and city codes for drainage.
So just a little bit more detail there. Communities across the country all have drainage design criteria manuals, and in general, you could just about pick up anybody's manual and they're gonna look very, very similar. Beginning in 2018, we are part of what a group in Nebraska called Nebraska H2O. I don't know, roughly there's maybe a dozen communities that are a member of that group. And it had to do with how you wanted to manage your stormwater in your community, and it also had to do with how big you were. As a part of that organization, we took a leadership role and worked together with that group to rewrite our drainage design criteria manual. We took the lead on that, and then I think there were 6 or 7 of those other communities. Our manual strongly resembles the criteria of Omaha and Lincoln. We part it down to meet the size of the community that we are. And then we as Norfolk created the skeleton for that drainage design manual, and then the other communities funded to put all the meat together on it. So it's not just us that use that. Like I say, there's probably 6 or 7 communities that are using the same manual. That was put together by an engineering company out of Omaha called Embrus Group.
A lot of retention wasn't always the case in developments either. So it is nice now that we are recognizing the water that does come off those developed lots and how that is retained on those properties instead of just pushing them on to the neighboring property like had been done pretty much all the time in the
Yeah.
past, so.
I'll add a little bit there. Kelby kind of opened it up to the regional retention, and Val, if you want to go back to the slide here that shows the drainage coming through the parcel. Also beginning, somewhere in 2016, 2017, the city had engaged a company called FHU Consulting Group to study regional retention here in the community. And I can recall as a consultant attending one of those meetings in April, May of 17, as regional retention as a concept was pushed out. And the idea there is that rather than have small retentions within each of your subdivisions, you go to larger regional retention that is managed by the community or by the city versus having these small cells that might be owned and managed by each of the developers. It works real well. Skyview is a great example of regional retention here in the community. Beginning back in 2018, as we were having those conversations, and we've been working on that, kind of kicking the can down the road, but we re-engaged Embrus Group again here about 2 years ago to start digging deeper into this. Part of the concept here is, I don't know officially what the drainage basin is going east of Highway 35. I refer to it as the Frog Creek Drainage Basin because I think there's a cemetery named Frog Creek back in that area. So I refer to everything kind of east up in this area as the Frog Creek Drainage Basin. We've been having, putting something right there on the Stanton-Madison County line has been part of that conversation. That is still a general concept to put something in that county line. A small dam would be a dry dam and kind of help back that up. Likewise, over here, I believe that property got right in there. That is property currently, that is actually a drainage detention cell as part of the Walters East Knolls property. But potentially expanding that as part of regional retention. And there's about 11 of these sites in the community that we're currently looking at. We've refined them down to about 8 to continue to move forward with. The other thing here was back in 2019, 2020, we had, the NRD came in and we cost shared a drainage study for this basin coming out of the east and moving down through this area. And one of the recommendations in that study was a channel, not realignment, but just cleaning up the channel, getting some more structure to it, allowing it to drain a little bit easier, both between where it crosses Highway 35 here, where it crosses Highway 35 to the south, and then actually kind of continuing that all the way down south to Highway 275. But the focus of the study was up in this area. So we're wanting to start working with the NRD and start getting this, a project identified and a project funded and start moving this forward. So that's the regional retention conversation.
And we have done a retention area with utilizing some TIF from the development before. We did J. Paul McIntosh's development a while back. There was retention brought in with that, and that was kind of a community retention. And I know some portion of the funds of his TIF bond went to cover some of that, so.
Yeah, that would be just south of Legacy Bend there. There's a 100-year retention cell.
Steve, could you talk on the lift station, using TIF dollars for that lift station a little bit?
That was a conversation that was floated with Kelby as part of that and identifying some funds to help us with the lift station conversation there. You know, that's a big conversation for tonight, but you know, ultimately it's about either close to $3 million, $2.5 million worth of improvements at the existing lift station, or rather than that, we focus on getting the Omaha lift station in the ground, and then we could eliminate the Highway 275 lift station is what we call it. It sits up there on Highway 35 actually, but we call it 275. But we're either going to need to put as part of Phase 3 improvements on that to increase sizing, another 2.5 million. And then in addition to that, if we do that, we're gonna need to put another 2.9 million into the sewer, the large, I think it's a 24-inch sewer, 30-inch sewer that runs kind of down from about Bluff Avenue all the way down to Monroe. So between that 2.9 million and the other 2.5 million for the 275 lift station, you got about 5.5 million there. That could all go towards the Omaha lift station. That'd be about half of the Omaha lift station. So that's the conversation there, but, you know, could we capture, I don't know what the number would be. We just floated it up to Kelby that it's, when this gets to the TIF agreement stage, we'd like to have some conversation about capturing some money for that project, whatever that is.
And just to clarify that the current lift station has sufficient capacity to handle my development. It's just, you're looking at future development growth coming from the northeast to resolve existing glitches and future development. So I just want to make sure that everybody was on the same page there.
Any other questions? Okay.
You should let that girl from 5 Rule talk more for you.
Gosh, she's good, isn't she? I should have went, I don't know, I should have skipped a couple. I would just like to mention the room is primarily full of supporters for this project, chamber members, business owners, and whatnot. So I don't know if they all want to get up and talk tonight, and if it's all pertinent to the blight study. But I want to point that out, that there is wide support for the project. And if you have additional questions, I'd certainly come up and address any of the economic development issues with that.
Right, just to clarify though, you're proposing a 501 unit subdivision.
Approximately. One of the things, that has changed some with, I would say, feedback of the community, retention, design. One of the things that I've done in the last 3 to 4 months, through feedback, looking at housing studies and within the community and talking to community leaders, is I have added significantly more single-family units, single-family houses, R1, R2 units, and I have eliminated some of the multifamily rental units. So
well, that's what I had noticed when you made your first statement. Yeah, because it's different than what I had heard before.
The density has decreased, but I increased which the community felt was the greatest demand, was more single-family homes, whether attached or detached, single-family. So I think that'll improve the project and again continue to fill that demand. So
thanks for the clarification.
Yep. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Five minutes, Don.
I know, am I on the time yet?
As soon as you stand there, we're timing. As soon as I recognize your name, she hits go, so.
God, this is not gonna be easy. Started out that way. Those that don't know, I'm Don Wisniewski. I took a strong interest in this project for a number of reasons. Number one, Chamber of Commerce. Number two, I'm in the home building industry and a home builder member. And third, and more importantly, a citizen of this great city and want to see it develop and grow as we can. I've been on the city council before, and I wish a project like this would have been in front of me at that point. This is exciting, this is growth, this is something that you guys get to be a part of and help make sure it goes the right direction. So I envy you guys a little bit. I really consider this as an economic 101 project. It doesn't get much simpler than that. It's economics 101 for our community and a chance for us to grow. I'm currently the chairman of the board for the city council, and our mission statement there is to grow commerce, promote business, and connect people. I'm also a home builder member, like I mentioned, not only locally, but state and nationally. I've been on the board of directors on a national level in Washington, D.C. for over 20 years, and have served as a national area chairman. And I've sat and I've gotten the thrill of sitting in a room with people from each and every state across the nation. And we have had meeting after meeting after meeting, locally, state, and nationally, and we all have the same problem. Every community in the United States is short on housing. So we have an opportunity to do this, and this is a great way of building what we do have. We're talking of a project, and I don't know the exact numbers, but 500 plus units here. This is something that most communities never get a chance to do, and we're sitting in a very, very good spot. Our mission statement at the home builder level on a national level is building homes, enriching communities, changing lives. Growth doesn't cost us, guys. Growth pays us. So, I mean, that is simply back to that 101. I understand that we're here tonight to talk about the blighted study. I totally get that. But like Paul Harvey says, the rest of the story, that opens up a toolbox and opens up the opportunity to use TIF, tax increment finance. Without that, that request doesn't go forward, and this project simply doesn't happen the way it's proposed, and it needs to happen. We need to take one step at a time, and I understand the blighted deal is the first step. So hopefully that keeps going. We have a developer here that's made Norfolk his home. He's talked to you about doing developments in a lot of different communities. I've known Kelby for quite some time. I do get to do some work with him occasionally, and I don't want to tell him this, maybe he's a fool to try and take this much of a risk and put this kind of money into a community, but there's proof that he's all about Norfolk too. The National League of Cities and the American Planners Association put together a housing supply accelerator toolkit that recommends tax increment financing as one of the successful housing financing tools that promote solutions to affordable housing. We don't call it affordable housing, we call it housing affordability. I hate the word, just like there was mentioned about blighted. We have housing affordability, and that's what we need to try and stay on top of. Some of the stats I want to share with you though are every time we turn around, we're getting hit with more and more cost of building homes. That's just the time of the life that we live in right now. The cost of regulations is $93,870 per home on a national level. That is regulations. Now, the national level is a little bit higher than Norfolk because I know what the average house here in Norfolk is, and that's around $245,000, $250,000, correct me if I'm wrong. So at 26% of the cost of every house that we build, that equates to about $62,000 to $64,000 of every house that's built. 1 minute, okay, I'll hurry. So, and another stat that every time we add $1,000 to a house, we eliminate over 120,000 prospective buyers across the nation for every $1,000. So by TIFing a project like this and helping keep those costs down, that's what we have been striving for and advocate for on a national level in the biggest way. I could go on about a whole lot more things that are economically feasible and smart for the city of Norfolk. I'll save it, maybe somebody else can do it. But our housing costs are getting too expensive right now, and this is one tool and one of the only tools that a developer can use to try and keep the cost of housing affordable. So I'm supporting this project, and I hope you guys all too. It makes more sense to do this and grow our city, because if we're not growing, guess what, guys? We're dying. So I got the red card. Thank you. Any questions? Too easy. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
I don't have as long of a name as Don. All right, my name is Scott Williams. I live at 1111 Nebraska Avenue, and I'm not representing anybody, I'm representing myself. I don't think, I know I couldn't have said what Don said any better than he did. This is economics, this is economic development 101 right here. Without a project like this, our employers are seeking projects like this so they can hire more employees to build their businesses. I'm looking for more people to sell insurance to. Frank's looking for more people to sell houses to. This is a huge trickle down. Jim wants to build buildings for people. So, residential, I like seeing that there's more residential or R1 and R2 buildings in this project than there was a year ago. I know most cities across Nebraska use TIF for residential development. So not everybody, I get that, but I strongly urge you to consider approving the blight designation for this property and let this project move forward. It's something that Norfolk needs. I won't use the term desperately, but it needs it critically. So I just encourage you all to vote for designating the TIF or the blight designation on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Questions? All right, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Terry Bauer. I'm a broker for a real estate company, Remax Associates in Norfolk. First, I just want to take a minute to tell you guys thanks for all of your work and dedication that you do as public government officers. I'm here tonight because I care about Norfolk's future, not just as a business owner, but as someone who works every single day with individuals and families trying to find a place to call home. I see the affordable housing shortage firsthand. This, to me, isn't just a number or reports. This is my daily reality. I work with people who are ready to buy, who want to stay here, raise their family, and call this home, especially when it comes to affordable housing. The need is real, and the project that Kelby Herman is proposing helps all of our needs. I truly support this development, not only because it is as much needed for the housing, but because it is being led by a local developer who has a proven reputation for doing things the right way. We should be encouraging those who are willing to invest in Norfolk, ones who are taking the risk to grow and build our beautiful community. I hope you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Yep.
Jim McKenzie. I hope you give me a little bit more than 5 minutes because I know a lot of you have spent more than an hour with Kelby, so I would hope that you give me some time. Nebraska Community Development Act and related state regulations address blight and substandard areas, primarily in the context of redevelopment and revitalization efforts. These laws aim to address areas exhibiting signs of decline, not to create a framework for intentionally blighting land for new development. The land that Mr. Herman owns does not qualify for blight and substandard designation. It is only through manipulation of state law that other parcels not owned by Mr. Herman were combined with his land so you could check off enough boxes to blight a larger area. Mr. Herman's land is prime development property and should not be blighted. In a March 24th City Economic Development meeting, Shane, you said about Mr. Herman's property, there's not much land for residential development. This will be developed. If this is such a good piece of land and you have that confidence that it will be developed, then why are we blighting and subsidizing it? Blight and TIF are for truly blighted land that would not be developed without TIF. This land will be developed, if not by Mr. Herman, by someone else. There's no need to give away tens of millions of our tax dollars to subsidize something that is going to develop on its own without TIF. By blighting prime development property, you most likely reduce the opportunity for other truly needy properties to get that subsidization. And what's your overall TIF planning and strategy? You turned down blight for the land that Mr. Dover wanted to develop in northwest Norfolk. If you vote yes on blighting this land, then what is the reason? What are your rules? It seems if we're going to say yes to blight prime development land, then we should pretty much blight and TIF everything. We should say yes to everyone who asks and give away our entire property tax base. It costs us money. It costs the citizens money. Nobody's talked about the cost of the citizens for this. The citizens have to make up the difference. And by the way, it looks like Mr. Dover's development's going ahead without TIF. Eventually, evidently the public is not supposed to know anything about the details of this development until you approve blight. I've long argued that the details of the development should be well known before we approve blight. That's not happened. However, it seems 7 of the 8 council persons have met with Mr. Herman behind closed doors and out of public view to discuss the details of this project. According to Mr. Herman's admission on March 24th Economic Development Subcommittee meeting, most of those meetings lasted an hour or more. One council person said no to those behind closed door meetings. How is this allowed? How is a developer allowed to meet with almost all the elected officials behind closed doors and advocate for this project, which could result in the giving away of millions of tax dollars? How? It's hard to even comprehend how that happens. It seems completely to circumvent the intent of the Open Meetings Act and public hearings. The public had zero idea of what was being talked about between the developer and our elected officials that could lead to the handing over of millions of tax dollars. I urge you to stop, table this request until we have all the answers and all our questions and our needs and our housing strategy as a city is clearly defined. Mr. Herman can continue to work on his plan, work out the drainage issues, and he can build it out without TIF if he so chooses. But we shouldn't make a hasty decision here which will affect the city's financial health for the next 25 years. Lastly, I don't believe any action you take tonight is legal because it was not taken upon receipt of the recommendation of the Planning Commission as required by Nebraska statute. Nebraska 18-2109 says, upon receipt of the recommendation of the Planning Commission or Board, or if no recommendations are received within 30 days after the public hearing required under subsection 2 of this section, the governing body shall hold a public meeting on the question of whether the area is substandard and blighted and give notice of the hearing as provided in 18-2115.01. That public hearing did not happen on a timely basis as intended by state law. It sat for 9 months with no action. Therefore, I believe any action taken tonight does not meet state law. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Jim. All right. Mike?
Mayor and council, my name is Mike Bacon. I'm an attorney. I appear here on behalf of Mr. Herman. A little background. It's been my privilege to practice under the Nebraska Community Development Law for 3.5 decades. I've worked in economic development and TIF statutes, if you will. Statewide practice, I've done projects from Douglas County to Scottsbluff County. Last count was more than 85 communities. I represent the Community Development Agency or Community Redevelopment Agency in a number of communities larger and smaller than Norfolk. I have worked on hundreds of TIF projects and projects that have resulted in thousands of new doors for people to live in across the state. I don't say this to impress you about my resume. I say it for 3 reasons. Number one, in those 85-plus communities, I've read a lot of blight and substandard studies, and I've reviewed them and consulted with almost all of the planners that do those blight and substandard studies. I have reviewed the one that 5 Rule did. I have personally looked at that property today, and I will tell you, oh, by the way, I've been a city attorney since like 1981. I haven't added up how many years that is, but it's a lot, and I still do that. I would suggest to you that you are on very solid ground under the statutes to declare this property blighted and substandard. The rules do not require that every piece of property in a blight and substandard circle have ugly houses on them. There's a Supreme Court case, I believe it's out of Omaha, that said it's a regional concept. And so, I'd also like to address the fact, reviewing your documents, it looks to me like planning and zoning, in fact, had a public hearing, and in fact recommended this. Whether it was 9 months ago or not, doesn't matter. The fact that they held the public hearing and your staff has reported to you that they've made that recommendation satisfies the law. The argument that it is missing, not making a recommendation for 9 months, you can go ahead anyway with this hearing and your declaration. So 5 Rule did a good job, complied with the law, did an excellent analysis and an excellent presentation. I don't want to get into the development or what it's going to be, but the next piece is I will talk to you about, part of my background is I was the one that drafted the legislation for TIF for workforce housing at the request of the Nebraska Bankers Association, because every community in the state, other than the metropolitan areas, has a shortage of housing and a lack of tools to make that housing occur. I have been doing economic development for over 35 years. Thank you. I assumed that if you build your businesses, that the housing would follow. I was stone wrong about that. What I have discovered over my 35 years, you cannot build your community without rooftops. And the costs that are incurred today, there's a gap between wages and the cost of housing. I'm driving a car that costs more than my original house, and it's a used car. You've got to do something to make your town grow. You need more housing, and the only way you're going to get it and improve other drainage issues is to declare the property blighted and substandard so you can consider the next step in moving forward on your housing. Be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question for you. You said within a circle around the area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but the houses to the, let me see, that would be towards the west? Those are definitely not blighted and substandard. So that would be in the circle.
The houses along
The whole
Highway
circle around the
35?
property is what I took it as you were referring to?
Yes, I drove
There?
those.
Yeah.
I drove
Did
those.
you drive right behind it where the tree line was?
No, I drove in front. I didn't see any access back in there. But they're over 40 years. You have
Not the ones to the west.
the ones down the highway.
No, behind it. Behind it, that would go to Westbrook, they're right behind it. There's Kelby's gonna give to the property owners at the backside. He's giving them,
That property, I did not drive that because
But
it
that's
was
in the
not in the
circle.
blight study.
right, but that would be in the circle of the property. If I'm understanding you. You said a circle
the-
around the property. You're just taking a circle one way, not around the property. Would you like to
We-
correct that?
We have a definition issue. I'll try and be more clear. The blight study, the yellow line shown on that map, is the area that I reviewed and the area that 5 Rule reviewed. You can have empty property and blight and substandard structures inside that yellow line. It doesn't mean that you have to have ugly houses dotting the property along Benjamin.
Okay, when you said the circle, I took it as a circle
As a
around the
larger
whole-
circle, yeah, oh, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. That was a very good question, by the way.
You said you helped write the legislation for the.
Well, I've leaned in on about 3 or 4 pieces, but the TIF for workforce housing, used to be you could only use TIF for site improvement, site acquisition, and infrastructure. If you meet the criteria of having the right construction price, which is set by the legislature, and make it available for workforce housing, if you have enough funds left, you can actually use that to help buy down the cost of the house itself. So you can build the vertical portion of that, yes.
Why in that legislation, and I know this is off topic, but since I have you, I've always wondered this question. I think it's 365 is the allowable amount in workforce housing structure, but the sale price, there's no cap on it of that structure.
No.
But there's a cap on investment.
There's
in
a cap on the construction cost, yeah.
Why wouldn't they put a cap on the sale price? Just curious.
I don't know. I'm sure you're all aware of this. Once you launch a good idea into the legislature, what comes out can be different. Yeah, so, and often is. It's like making sausage. The concept is good. We need some tools in all the towns that I work in that, to help buy that down. By the way, 75% of my practice is representing communities and 25% for developers. So my focus is on growing communities, and it's just tough out there. It's tough out there to do that piece of property with its challenges, with its drainage, with its sewer and all that stuff. You're talking millions of dollars in costs. It's not flat and prime ground. So, anyway, any other questions? Great town, by the way. I've worked on some projects here. Victory Village, I think, was the last one. It looks nice. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mike.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Hope y'all are doing good.
Sure, and state your name and.
Yeah, my
and
name
this-
is Luis Mendez. I live here in Norfolk at 303 South 12th Street. And I come to you all today not representing any big companies, just speaking on behalf of myself and my fellow classmates. I am a student here in Northeast, the community college here in Norfolk. And on behalf of me and my classmates, just wanted to ask for you guys' support on Mr. Herman's project. We feel with the housing he'd set up with this project, it opened many opportunities for me and my friends. You know, we're just trying to take a chance here with Norfolk, Northeast, trying to make a name for ourselves. You know, I'm in the plumbing and HVAC department, and I hope to graduate in about 3 years, make my own company here in Norfolk, try to give back to the people like they've given to me. And same with my friends, you know, they're studying all fields to benefit the people in Norfolk, electricians, nursing, everything just to help. So that's all I really wanted to say, you know. Ask for you guys' support. I feel it just opened so many opportunities, not just for me, but, you know, for people who are out there just trying to make a name for themselves, trying to prove that you can come from almost nothing and come out on top. Thank you.
Thank you.
when you graduate, I want you to come back, when you graduate, I want you to come back and give us an update. We want you to stay.
Thank you. I'll gladly do that.
Mike, where are you from?
You ever heard of Skyler?
Skyler?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Clausen and members of the Norfolk City Council. I'm Roger Nadrical. I am here representing myself as well as the CEO of NeighborWorks Northeast Nebraska. NeighborWorks Northeast Nebraska has been addressing affordable workforce housing for 30 years and continues to be a need in our community. The nationwide housing shortage continues to impact communities across the country, and here in Norfolk it's no exception, particularly when it comes to workforce housing. Given the current housing conditions, it is difficult to understand why any entity would create barriers for a developer who is willing to take on substantial risks involved in developing a new subdivision. The need for a blight study, as has been mentioned, definitely helps set the path for tax increment financing. TIF remains one of the few tools available to support housing development. Developers like Kelby should be allowed to access this. TIF has been successfully utilized in both Norfolk and Columbus in previous projects that we have been involved in, and Kelby has been a partner with us on those projects many times and have been very successful. We are once again committed to partnering with him by managing deed restrictions and rent restrictions on the proposed housing that would be going into this subdivision. At NeighborWorks Northeast Nebraska, housing is our mission. We actively pursue funding and partnerships to meet our community needs. In fact, earlier this year, we had the opportunity to apply for some additional grant funds from the state of Nebraska Department of Economic Development to grow our workforce housing fund, a revolving loan fund for developers and builders. Currently, we are managing about $15 million worth of a workforce fund between here and Norfolk and in Schuyler and David City. We were awarded a grant, $1.5 million, to be brought here to Norfolk to help with the construction costs of a project such as this. When I submitted the application, I did put in that this would be the proposed project to be awarded the funds once the project gets going, and we approved that loan. And that project scored out of 12 applications. It was the top 3 applications in the state. So we are dedicated to add workforce housing to Norfolk. And with that workforce fund, the $1.5 million, it's a revolving loan fund that he'll be using for construction costs. And we eventually revolve back into our pool to be used for other developments here in the community, such as the other 2 awards that we already have in place here in Norfolk. Kelby will be able to leverage this below market rate loan in conjunction with other financing options to bring new workforce housing to Norfolk. And so we're very supportive of this project and ask you, as members of the Norfolk City Council, to approve the blight study, which is a necessary step in allowing Kelby to apply for TIF and move this development forward. Any questions I can address for anybody?
So is the revolving fund, is that just for the, or is it for down payment assistance too?
It depends on, some of it can be used for down payment assistance, but the initial intent would be for the construction costs, for the development to add the housing.
So just get the cost lower, so you're not so worried about the down payment assistance up
Right.
on the tail end, okay.
Yep.
Right.
Eventually, it can revolve and be used for down payment assistance as well for the second use. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Den, 109 Kings Way. I own the Norfolk Pizza Ranch here in town. I'm up here for a complete different reason. I just kind of want to let you guys know that, you know, there's other business owners in here. In the restaurant world, ever since COVID, it's been real tough to find help. One of the things that we struggle with every time I go through and I'm taking a look at some of the different applicants that we have is I see people from West Point, I see people from Wayne, Neely, that have a substantial drive to Norfolk every single day. My question is, why are you looking to work in Norfolk if you live there? And their question is, I can't find housing in Norfolk. So I 100% support Kelby's project. I think it'd be a great thing. It's great. I haven't done the research that these guys have had done in back of me. But for as a business owner and other restaurant owners here in town, where it's really hard since COVID to try and find good quality help, there are good quality candidates out there that are looking to come to Norfolk, and the number one reason they give me, I don't have a place to live. So we have to subsidize income if we do hire them. With the price of gas, we're paying a little higher rates to try and get some of those people to come here, and hopefully that they can find a good place to live. So I thought I would just put that input in. Is there any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Any chicken?
Thanks, Steve.
Mayor Clausen, you didn't really think you could keep this limited to the blight study, did you, in the beginning?
No, I didn't. It was, I tried though.
No, that's okay. Naturally, it's all going to come out. So, Mayor and Council, I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of what's been said tonight, and I think you've received a lot of good feedback. I just want to have a couple of thoughts that came to my mind as I was listening, because I am here to support all of you. Because that's my job, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, and I'm going to do it as well as I can. So I wanted to point something out, and probably the only one of you that will be aware of this is probably Jim, because he's been on council long enough. But about 15 years ago, there was a council meeting where NENAD was here presenting some reports on housing, and housing units needed was one part of that, and population growth. And so through that meeting, NENAD presented their report, and Mayor Fuchman at the time asked a question to the person from NENAD and said, so, how many houses do we need to build and make sure they get built? She said, none. You're not growing, and projections don't show that you're going to grow. And so I guess I'm here to remind you that it doesn't take much to slip back, especially in rural America, back to that state of affairs. So I would encourage you to remember that and to appreciate and take advantage of the opportunities that you have here today to encourage more housing, which is going to help your businesses and it's going to help everybody in this town. It's going to help reduce our overall tax burden if you look into the future. So I know at first glance a lot of these projects might look massive. It might look like a lot of services will be brought to these areas where you might not be receiving property tax money for it, but I assure you the long-term gain for this is going to be too great, I think, to estimate right now. So, and another comment I want to make, too, is that Mr. McKenzie pointed out issues with meeting with developers. And I'm going to have the opposite opinion on that. I would encourage all of you to meet with developers, all of them. I find that as a constituent and as a voter here, that I think that's my council members being educated on a project, finding out more about it, finding out more on both sides, on all angles. So it's a legislative process. You're not judges, you're not legal officials, you're not making rulings on things. The legislative process is deliberated in the open in front of everybody. So I would encourage you to do that more. I think that's educating yourselves, and I certainly as a voter would want you to do so. So with that, I'm going to end my comments because there's been too many good things said tonight. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.
David Jansma, been a lifelong resident of this community, and I do think it needs to evolve and develop. But I hear all the people here that have a vested interest in this development as improving their lifestyle, their income. Please don't forget the rest of us. Please don't forget all the people that have given their heart and soul and body to this community. Don't leave us behind. Don't forget about us. And think about that when you're contemplating the overall situation to everybody for this. Maybe it is a positive aspect. Maybe it's not. It's definitely a lot of money getting manipulated around. Don't forget that. But don't forget the rest of us. All right?
Thanks, David.
Good afternoon, or evening, I should say, Mayor and City Council. My name is Trevor Pettit. I live at 1325 West Park Avenue. I will be graduating Wayne State College with a business and finance degree. I will be coming back to my family business, Pettit Plumbing and Heating. I will be graduating, like I said, with a finance degree and hopefully taking upon that side of the business. Norfolk has made it a focus to encourage young professionals such as myself to come back and lead. This development would provide much needed housing options for my generation. I know 22 for a lot of you could probably seem like a long time ago, but it is. Norfolk leadership. Norfolk leadership has done a great job.
That's your time right there.
Norfolk leadership has done a great job with upgrades to Johnson Park, that is right next to our building, with downtown and many other things, but hasn't had the opportunity to do much to address the housing shortage. I ask that you support this development, and I think it would be good for the future of Norfolk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, I'm Kim Davis. I live at 310 Oak Street. And first I wanted to say, Jim referenced meeting with the developers, but he highlighted behind closed doors, and I do think that that would be a bit inappropriate to do. I am not against adding more housing. I am not against adding more citizens to the city of Norfolk. What I have a problem with is our streets and our roads. A good example is one time school let out early, and I tried to get off of Prospect out onto First Street, and it was backed up from the traffic circle past the railroad tracks. It took me 7 minutes to get out. I got down the road, got down Prospect, stopped at Prospect and 13th Street, and sat through 9 traffic lights trying to get out. I don't think we have the structure to be adding any more vehicles or people to our roads. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Hi, Kathy Caney, 1108 Westbrook. So we live just to the west of this land. We've had a lot of neighborhood talks, one with Kelby that he had at the library, a couple more that he's had with just 1 or 2 residents. I've asked him about the other neighbors at those meetings, and he's like, that'll come later. So we're not against the housing. I know we're not supposed to talk about TIF. Everybody has. I'm against TIF. And there's people in office that are against TIF. It's been in the Norfolk Daily News. I think it was the state auditor that had an article in there. We have to be careful. We have to be careful with what we do. Because if this isn't done right, we've got floodplains there. We're going to need flood insurance. We're going to have water in our basements. You know, the 50-foot that we're being told that we're getting as a buffer, I actually saw a plan that called that a drainage ditch. So if we're not very, very careful with how we do this, you know, the lift station, you guys tell me that the lift station will handle it, but I'm also hearing we need millions of dollars in upgrades of it. So is it gonna handle it? The most recent thing was the tearing down of the trees and the black smoke. I don't know if the fire department is here tonight, but the fire department had pulled all those because the winds came up and the snow went away and it was too dry. So I came home, I got notified of that. So I came home the day they got pulled at 5 o'clock at night, and I still see a diesel wagon out there pouring diesel into these trees and these fires. So I called the fire department and he said, what? We pulled those fire permits. I'm like, well, so the fire chief called me. Great guy. He said, Kelly, I just talked to the point guy. And if you have any further problems, you know, Roger and I didn't feel safe. Those fires were right behind us and the wind was high. And now I find out that it's totally against to even use diesel. So it's hard to build trust in something when they can't even follow the fire safeties of our city. So, and affordable housing, I've brought this up before. I don't know, maybe the manager that was up here earlier, can the average employee at these restaurants afford affordable housing at $350,000? I don't see it happening, but so caution, be careful, because there's a lot at stake if we don't do this right.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good evening. Zoran Raybeck, Actis Nutrition Vice President. We're just looking for more affordable housing for our employees. About 35% of my workforce lives about 60 miles outside the city and commuting in. This would be a great project to get some new housing in the city to be able to get some more people to employ and to grow our community. So thank you for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll keep this real short, simple. I'm not against the housing up there, but my question is this. When was the last time Randy Walters came here asking for TIF? That's all I've got to say.
I don't think he stated it right away, so.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, that's all right.
Steve Seahigh.
Thank you, Steve. All right, any more discussion? Okay, Seeing no more discussion, Planning and Commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing to hear comments on and review the blight and substandard determination study for the area referred to as North State Highway 35 and Benjamin Avenue on July 16, 2024. The study comprises an estimated 73.167 acres located both inside and outside of the city limits of Norfolk. 3 of the substandard criteria and 4 subjective and 2 objective of the blight criteria were identified as being met by 5 rural planning, and the area was found to warrant a designation as blighted and substandard. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the declaration of North State Highway 35 and Benjamin Avenue as blighted and substandard with a 6-to-1 vote.
All right, thank you. I'll close the hearing and now ask for a motion for resolution consideration, item number 25 of Resolution 2025-17, declaring the North State Highway 35 and Benjamin Avenue redevelopment area as blighted and substandard.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of Resolution 20-25-17.
Second. A motion is second. Discussion?
I guess I'm having a real hard time just looking at a piece of farm ground and saying that it's blighted. That's where I'm hung up at. And I know the gentleman said doesn't need to have housing or buildings, but if I look at a piece of farm ground, I'm driving down the road, I don't say, oh, that's blighted. I have a problem with that. And I guess I'm with Cody Ronfeld, who was the Planning Commission member, who was the only one that said the same thing. I guess I see his point of view, and I guess that's where I'm stuck, for the record.
Well, I guess that's where we differ, because I don't have a problem with that, especially not when I see this number of standards met on it. I see no way that we should turn this resolution down with a number of standards that have been met on it. So, I mean, you may not like it that a residential space is called, as she presented, said blighted and substandard, but yeah, houses age, and that's all occurred in that area. So I have absolutely no problem with this resolution concerning this blighted and substandard rating for this area.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anyone from the public at this time for discussion? All right, seeing none, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Langy, Webb, Hildebrand. Voting in opposition, Beckman. Resolution 2025-17 is adopted.
Okay, moving on to our regular agenda, item number 27. Consideration of ordinance number 5925, vacating a portion of Poppy Drive and North 47th Circle located at Pines Subdivision, a part of the southwest quarter of Section 7, Township 24. We'll see you guys. North Range 1, west of 6th PM, Madison County, Nebraska.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5925.
Second. We can just take a minute, let everybody clear the room. Chief, nobody wants to hear your Norfolk Fire Division annual report tonight. It's some good stuff, and everybody just took off on you.
Need to bring him in next meeting.
Okay, let's keep moving on here. We were on ordinance number 9525, and I read that, and I think, did we get a motion second on that?
Yes, we did. We have a motion and a second.
All right. Any discussion on this? And Steve, I will refer to you on this. That's Steve Ramus. I'll refer to you on this, I guess.
Absolutely. So,
we're on item 27.
Absolutely. Poppy Drive, so this was platted as part of Karmazine's Phase 1 in the North Pine subdivision. The concept there included a roundabout, more of a mini roundabout, in anticipation of some potential future connection to the north. As Steve has completed most of Phase 1 and is ready to move into Phase 2, he wanted to eliminate the concept of the roundabout, just go more to a traditional T intersection there, anticipating that any future development to the north could just tee into that intersection. So what's happening here is where this motion tonight would vacate the area you see here at the intersection of Poppy Drive and North 47th Circle. After we would pass this would go, I believe this goes back to the county. They would hear it. Once they vacate it, then Karmazine would come in and then replat over this area. So we've contacted utilities to receive utility sign off on this. There's no utilities there to sign off on. It's just a vacant area. So, have any questions?
No questions, but somebody was anxious to get out of here just now. Whoa. Anybody else? Questions on this? See no questions from the council. Any discussion from the public? Anybody have a question for us?
There's nobody left.
Everybody took off, right? All right, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to vacate a portion of Poppy Drive and North 47th Circle located in the Pine subdivision, a part of the southwest quarter of Section 7, Township 24 North, Range 1 west of the 6th PM, Madison County, Nebraska, and providing for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5925 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition to this, I will make a motion to suspend the rules and waive the second and third readings.
Second. We have a motion, a second. Discussion, please. Seeing no discussion up here, I'm asking the public if there's any other discussion. Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5925 carries on second and third.
All right, that brings us to item number 28, consideration of approval of an agreement with Ryan Anderson doing business as Norfolk Football Club to use the city multipurpose fields and green space in the parks and the south field in Veterans, and the soccer field in Veterans Memorial Park for the youth soccer practice games, training, and tournament for their 2025 soccer season. This item was tabled at the April 7th, 2025 City Council meeting. So the first motion I'll need is to remove from table.
I'd make the motion to remove it from the table.
Second.
Motion is second, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
So I got ahead of myself there a little bit. Now we need consideration of approval of the agreement with Ryan Anderson.
I'll offer for consideration.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to second. We'll open this up for discussion. Nate, we'll have you lead the discussion on this.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This was tabled at the last meeting. I was unavailable to answer questions, so that's why we're here tonight. And so
Okay.
This is our standard agreement with our local clubs, whether it's baseball, soccer. It's fairly standard, and we have a standard fee structure that's set up for that as well. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them today.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm sure you're gonna have some questions here, so.
Nate, the reason I pulled this is because I want to highlight the fact that I coached my son's soccer team, and we don't have 2 fields, I think, in the entire community to use. And so when we lease these fields out, the general public doesn't have access to them. We don't have an inventory of soccer fields to really be leasing these fields out. What happens is someone will show up to the field, and then who's ever on the field has to leave.
And you have to have the means to reserve the field. You have to have the financial means to pay for it. You have to have the financial means to pay for insurance, and then afford each soccer player. And then you have to understand the system it takes to do it. You got to create an event in the event guide, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Nate?
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to highlight it. One, the inventory of soccer fields is really low, and two, if we're going to allow to lease these and not allow fair and equal access to the entire community, I think we need to work towards making this more accessible for everybody.
Yep. I'll just make a couple comments on that. That is correct. We only do have 2 fields that are currently used for soccer throughout our community. For a community this size, you probably need more like 10. So we know it is overused. Looking at the schedule, it's not overscheduled though. For instance, this group will be using it Monday and Wednesday nights, but the rest of the week right now is open in May. So I know there's other groups that are out there using it, maybe not, and there's no requirement to schedule with us. It's just if you want a guaranteed time, then you would schedule it. What we are doing though, we are adding goals at Embrace Park. We've already purchased those as part of the budget process. And so that's going to add another field and another ability for groups to use soccer fields. We also have the option of Liberty Bell. There is a little bit of room there to maybe purchase some goals for that field as well. And Winter Park does have goals as well. So I mean, there are a couple of parks that we don't schedule. So just the general public has a place to go kick a ball around or play soccer. But I think Embrace will help alleviate some of that problem moving forward. Long term, we are planning right now to where can we put a complex? How can it be close to town? And what size can we accommodate? And then where else would we get the funds to do that? So we are working on that. It is a need in the community. We can say that. Any other questions, I guess, or?
Nate, I just think you should keep an eye on if those 2 fields get to a point, like Monday, Wednesday is not bad, but if it gets to a point where then we just have to look at a different way of looking at those fields and having access to them, so.
Absolutely, and usually everyone's going to want it at the same time. So, yeah, so. Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? I see none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
On item number 29, consideration approval, change order number 1 with John T. Jones Construction Company for the water pollution control plant improvements, grit facility, resulting in a net increase of $72,462.
I'll offer for consideration the approval of change order number 1.
Second.
Okay, we have motion second. Steve, we'll be looking for you on the discussion with this.
Yeah, Mayor, I'm going to bring up the project manager, Rob Huntley, and he'll walk the council through this.
Well, Rob, change order 1 is better than change order 20, so.
Sure, we're not gonna have change order 20 hopefully on this project, so.
Right.
Yeah, we want deducts going forward. Rob Huntley, wastewater superintendent. Good evening, Mayor and Council. WPC is asking for approval for change order number 1 for the WPC grit facility project totaling the sum of $72,462. This change order consists of 4 sub-change orders, and this is really just dealing with the grit building as we're moving forward. The first one would be the additional of 2 frost-free stoops for man doors 101-1 and 103 on the west side of the overland waste proportion of the grit building for a cost of $20,280. The second one was a change order for the 2 garage doors are sort of coiling doors. Originally, we had aluminum. This is a very hazardous location. It was found that galvanized steel probably do us a little better job there, a little longer lasting, and that is a cost of $2,797. The third one was a change order for all precast. It's a precast building that we're putting up. Embeds from carbon steel to stainless steel for a cost of $48,214. This will reduce the cost of maintenance, extend the life of the building due to the corrosive environment out there. This is a value added because the connections have not been purchased yet and can be installed at this time. It would have been in the original contract if we would have asked for it at that time. Not everybody bidding on the project was capable of doing the stainless steel inserts. The last one is the cast-in electrical boxes for a cost of $1,163. This is our external electrical boxes that are around the building. It just puts the boxes inside the casting of the precast so we don't have them externally sticking out with conduits, things that get hit. Just kind of made sense as we march forward. So, like I say, the total cost is $72,482. We kind of feel this is value added to our building. Just things that we're kind of moving forward with, so. Would like your approval of that.
One little
Any
question here,
questions?
Rob.
Absolutely.
It had a pretty decent dollar amount to it, but carbon steel to stainless steel, was there any option of galvanized steel? for
There
embeds?
wasn't, but it's gonna be the same issue with the corrosion. Well, the hydrogen sulfide gas is our biggest problem in this building. Very corrosive to galvanize as well. Yeah, the last one, the carbon steel, the cost is probably gonna be pretty similar, as I've seen on other things between galvanized and stainless, the costs are fairly similar. We just thought that this was just a great option for us. One of the things in the joint of the buildings, you know, there's the caulking and all that stuff. If we, for some reason, could get gas in behind that, you know, the stainless steel is not gonna corrode, so. Any other questions I can answer?
And you indicated that the other bids didn't have the capability of offering that stainless steel?
We didn't know at the time when we put out for, that was even an option, that we could get stainless steel embeds in. And they actually came to us with it, saying, hey, you know, this is a very corrosive environment, we do have this option. Again, it would have cost us this much to do it if we would have had that ability right out of the gate. There's no markup on it for doing it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rob, have you been, I believe this is correct, but leading question, have you been changing out some stuff out there to stainless steel?
Absolutely.
Over the last few
So,
years?
as we move forward out there, a lot of our piping and stuff, our wasting lines were done in cast. Actually, some of it was just done in Schedule 40 black pipe. That stuff is failing. So we're putting in stainless steel piping. Some of our equipment was aluminum. Aluminum heats up pretty fast as well, along with galvanized. So as we move forward, we found that stainless has a nice value added to it. Should last well beyond 100 years. I mean, it's not gonna wear out, it's not gonna rot out. A little more cost up front, but the long run is we don't take things offline. We can keep things up and going. Should last for a long time. So that is what you're absolutely right, Steve. As we move forward, we're doing everything as permanent situation. So the cost of replacing things is very expensive with labor and downtime. So if we can do it right, we want to do it right. And that's what these 4 projects are. These are just doing the project right. So. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Any other discussion from the public? Any questions? All right, seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
And item number 30, consideration approval change order number 2F with IES Construction, Inc. I'm sorry, Commercial Inc. for the Johnson Park Improvement Project bid package for park and trail lighting and electrical. The project resulting in a net increase of $9,370.14.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Second. Motion and a second on this discussion. Steve?
Yes, Mayor and Council. Bringing up a couple notes here. This is final change order for the electrical trail lighting and electrical interior to the Johnson's Park project. This would be the final change order, total net increase of $9,370.14. The actual change order does have both a combination of additions and as well as deducts. Just a couple things here that generally added up to the deducts is during construction, some realignment of some of the conduit, subsequently some additional conductors as well. The project overall, even with the change orders built into the budget, the Johnson Park project overall is coming in about it'll be around $150,000 to $175,000. I'm still kind of adding up all the charges against the project, but again, overall, this would be the final project on the final construction contract. The only one out there that would be remaining is the irrigation and sodding, and that'll be finishing up here a little bit later this month. So we're getting right down to the very end, and like I say, we're bringing it in under budget.
Any questions? No discussion. Anybody have questions? Discussion of the public? All right. Seeing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item number 31, consideration of ordinance number 5926, amending section 24-20 or 94 of the city code to remove the one-way designation of the alley from 2nd Street to 3rd Street between Norfolk Avenue and Madison Avenue.
Your Honor, I move consideration of ordinance number 5926.
Second.
Private motion second. We'll move into discussion here with Candace leading us.
I'm gonna log in, give you guys a visual of where we're talking about. Okay, so what we're proposing is an amendment of section 24-94 of City Code to remove the one-way designation for the east to west alley from 2nd Street to 3rd Street between Norfolk Avenue and Madison Avenue. And so that's this alley here that we're looking at between the Mongolian Grill and Wells Fargo. We found that this ordinance was put into place in 1983 at the request of the business community. At that time, there was, I would say, some resistance, it sounds like, from city staff to put this ordinance in place, but the business community desired it, and so it was put into effect. Recently, with the growth in the downtown district and the establishment of River Point Square, this area has actually become a very popular destination for community events. And one of those events is our Norfolk Farmers Market, which will kick off in May. Due to the growth of the farmers market, they're actually looking at expanding their boundaries and have done so via their agreement that was passed earlier today on the consent agenda. Typically, in the past, they have stopped here, but due to the growth of the market and more vendors wanting to be involved, they've requested to move that down to right about here. And so the market will be a little bigger this year, which is exciting because the state of Nebraska has decided to launch their passport program here in May. So exciting, but what that does is, when we close off this alleyway with the current ordinance in place, we effectively block traffic from accessing the Wells Fargo drive-through. And so staff's had a lot of good conversations with the farmers market, with the Downtown Norfolk Association, with Wells Fargo, with the Mongolian Grill. And we've talked about taking and repealing this ordinance that really only allows one-way traffic due to just the changes in how the downtown's being utilized, what that area looks like now versus 1983. We brought that forward to staff, Public Works, Public Safety, and at a staff meeting, and we really didn't see any reason to not repeal it. And so what we'd like to make is make this fully accessible both ways. This lot's owned by Wells Fargo, and it would allow a nice U-turn into their lot. Mongolian Grill, in the current agreement, has allowed access through their private drive. And then our team dropped off copies of the ordinance with the other properties located on this block, just to give them some awareness that this was coming through. So that's what we're proposing to do, and that's what we'd like to see happen. I think it represents growth. There's always challenges with growth, but this is, I think, a way that everybody can win and we can move forward. So,
I got a question. It's
Yes.
probably more for Steve. Because I think I'm thinking right, there's no one-ways on the south side of Norfolk Avenue alleys, but there is on the north side. And more than just this one, am I correct?
I was thinking that, I do believe there's another one south of this, but I was also thinking that the block to the west from between Third and Fourth was one-way as well.
Right, so
And then I do
south
think
side of
there's-
Norfolk Avenue alleys have one-ways, north side of
North
Norfolk
side,
Avenue does
I'm not
not.
aware of one on the north side, but
I
there's, I
would,
think, three on the south.
so what I'm saying is I feel, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'd rather amend this amendment to say all of the one-ways in those alleys are gone. If you're gonna get rid of one, why not all of them? One in the middle of them makes no sense, just get rid of all of them.
I would agree with that.
yeah, the other one noted is between 4th and 5th Street, here, between Madison and Phillip Avenue. So that former Courtesy Ford dealership, and where that student housing is currently built.
I would, I agree with you guys. I think the elimination of this could be very beneficial to get rid of that one way, but I don't know if we want to amend this particular ordinance just because I think there's business owners or possibly residents that may be affected by the ones not here. On this particular block, these businesses were notified ahead of time.
Correct.
And I think we should probably give the same courtesy to the other businesses.
I think that's a pretty good idea too, because there's actually a one-way street I didn't even realize was a one-way street until we got talking about this. And in an effort to keep everything on track for what Candace was talking about, having this removed, if that's really what you want us to do, we can revisit the other remaining one-way streets and come back at a later meeting.
I'm good with that, but yeah, let's do that.
Any more questions for me?
I don't know, anybody, no, okay. Thank you. Any concerns or questions from the public? All right, seeing none, please. Oh, wait, okay. I didn't see ya. You snuck in on the wrong, other side over there.
My name is Alyssa Mathis, and I'm representing the Norfolk Farmers Market. This will be my 5th year as a vendor with the market, and my first year as president of the market. And we just want to thank you guys for considering this. We've seen a whole lot of growth since my first year vending there. It's grown every year. This year I have 10+ new vendors signed up, which is like almost 30% growth compared to last year. So making this change would just really help with the downtown traffic flow, and we really appreciate you guys considering this. Any questions for me?
Thanks for being a part of the downtown. Thanks for
Yeah.
doing that, so.
Thanks for everything you've done. Okay, any other discussion? Man, I was moving quick.
Carol Leander Gaster, live at 408 North 11th Street here in Norfolk. I am the director of the River Point Creative District in downtown Norfolk, and I just wanted to step forward to support this change. The Farmers Market has been a great partner for the Creative District and for local artists to give them a platform. And also, this year, they've opened up the space to more events, or more, they're having a booth for philanthropists to be at the Farmers Market. And they've just been a great partner in downtown. So I want to support what they're doing. And also this change will not only help the Farmers Market, but also help the other events that happen there, the concerts, and the other things that we try to bring into downtown. So thank you for support for this change.
Thank you.
Sorry. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Tracy Jeffrey, Visit Norfolk Director, and I just want to voice our support for the removing of the alleyway behind 2nd and 3rd Street between Norfolk Avenue and Madison. I also want to express how important it is to expand our farmers market in downtown. When the market is in our downtown, you see a lot of people grabbing coffee, going out to eat, shopping at local businesses, and walking through our River Point district. It creates a ripple effect and benefits the entire area. And according to Placer AI, the company that we use to get data for visitors, we have seen over 2,900 people in at the Saturday Farmers Market, which is an increase of 26.6% from the previous year. And we can track where our visitors are coming from, so they're not just coming from Norfolk. They're coming from Stanton, Pierce, Omaha, West Point, from all the different areas that money is coming into our economy. And so, like Candace said, on Saturday, May 3rd, Visit Nebraska is going to launch their Nebraska Passport program, and that's going to expect 100 to 200 additional visitors in our community that follow that launch for that. So we're very excited to be launching that at our Norfolk Farmers Market. So thank you for your support.
Thank you.
You need a taller mic. Good evening, I'm Ben Uzel. I'm the owner of Pedal Therapy Bike here in town. I purchased that last year. On behalf, sorry, I was not planning on this. Other than the farmer's market and everything else we've got going on downtown, it would also benefit me in the fact that I don't have to abide by those one-ways downtown when I'm running the pedal therapy bike. Every once in a while, people get tired. Taking a shortcut through some of those alleyways would be beneficial. So I'm just in support of not only this amendment, but with what Councilman Granquist had said with looking at the other one-ways downtown to amend those. So I would boost my support on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, please vote. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 24-94 of the official city code to remove the one-way designation for the east-west alley from 2nd Street to 3rd Street between Norfolk Avenue and Madison Avenue, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, now you can vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5926 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I'd move that we suspend the rules and pass this on second and third reading, as there was no opposition and it is dearly needed, I believe.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to second. Any discussion? Seeing no other discussion, I will, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5926 carries on second and third.
All right, we are on to our administrative reports, and it's the Norfolk Fire Division's annual report. You're even losing more crowd.
They're probably just all concerned about the weather, I get it. So. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think we're all familiar with each other, but if not, my name's Tim Rogge, Fire Chief here at Norfolk Fire and Rescue, and I'm here on behalf of the organization to deliver the annual report tonight. This will be short and sweet, but it is important to me to be able to recognize our team. First and foremost, I just want to publicly say thank you to all of our responders that are watching over things tonight, those that are on and off duty, and I want to give credit to the team that put this annual report together, which was not me. We have several people that submit data to make this a good, solid report. We spit all of that Caitlin's way, and then she does her magic and compiles this with the help of a couple others. But it's a tedious process, but it's very much worth it when you get an opportunity to look back at the numbers over the years and some of the accomplishments. This year, again, a record year. This team ran 3,512 calls. That was up 295 calls from last year. It was hands down the sharpest increase we've seen in calls since one of the 2 years that we really saw the pandemic hit us for call volume. Those calls have certainly died off, but the call volume has trended upwards in a big way. So let's put an incredible stress on the on and off duty teams. Because of this number, we called in extra help because of multiple calls 397 times this year. Those are people that are off duty with family trying to get rest, both full-time and reserve staff. Year to date, as of this morning, we were 40 calls ahead of where we were last year on this same date, so I see no reason to believe that trend is going to stop. Of those calls, had this question last year, I think from Councilman Arns, so I want to answer it. 87% of those are EMS calls, so it's right about the same as we were last year. We're very grateful that we have a large complement of paramedics. All but 6 of our full-time staff are medics. 3 of those are in the paramedic program at Northeast Community College as we speak, and the other 3 will be going in the next year. Continuing on with my message, I'm just kind of going through the annual report. PR events, we did a couple things this year with parks that were enjoyable. The worst run ever 5K at Johnson Park. We also partnered with parks to put on a community 9/11 memorial stair climb. In both of those events, I learned that I'm not the same as I was 20 years ago, and that things hurt a lot more the next day. So, especially when you're trying to compete with people like Trevor and people that are in way better shape. But they were great community events. The 9/11 memorial event, we're planning on doing again this year. We've done something annually, and it's really blossomed into something that's pretty cool. So I would encourage you to come on out in September and join in that community event. It's a neat thing. Hosted our open house and safety days in October. And the snowball drop. We participated in the holiday gathering downtown. Our reserves had a large footprint in that event, and some of our full-time staff. In fact, we even had one dressed as Grinch, if I recall correctly, downtown to do the snowball drop for different ages of kids. That was a neat way to showcase the tower that we have and be a part of the community. Our area served continues to be a large one. Over 30,000 population served and 100 plus square miles. Some of the significant events that we had this year, we added something called Haas Alert Safety. It's a device that can be captured through your phone or through your car. If you have the appropriate diagnostics in your car or computer systems, it can give you up to 30 seconds notice that there's a vehicle accident or something ahead of you where emergency vehicles are on scene, and alert you to maybe avoid that area if you can, to try not to cause another accident. So that's been something that Chief O'Brien and company worked on. Had a couple mutual aid responses, several. One big one was up in Pierce in April. We had some life-saving recognitions. A couple citizens, James Kelly and Steve Jansen, were recognized for their efforts in a save at a local golf course this year. Pretty impressive stuff. Had it not been for them, a life could have been lost that day, but they stepped up and partnered with our team at Station 2 and saved a life instead. On the operations side, Chief O'Brien's doing a solid job with our captains that run the shifts. Very proud of them. Implemented some things this year. Blue Card Command training is something that helps our officers, our command staff, speak the same language when they get on scene so that the troops are used to hearing certain things. We've continued to make peer support a strong emphasis, and we've hosted some moral injury and PTSD for post-traumatic stress disorder training for our staff. We even had a night where family and friends could come, loved ones, and sit in on those trainings so they can see what to look for in their responders if they're struggling. We had good buy-in from lots of different organizations, both law and fire, around this corner of the state. Sending another crew out to fire school in May, which is great. We hosted a deaf and hard of hearing safety day with kids from local schools that are either deaf of hard or hard of hearing. This was very educational for us and our teams, and it was very nice to bridge that gap and just make our responders more aware of some of the things they might come upon out in the general public. So that was a great event. Did some annual things like participating in High Five Fridays at the schools, the Land and Boss Bike Rodeo, even did a team building exercise with Northeast Community College softball team. In the midst of all these calls, took some time to work with contractors on some building improvements too. Had both roofs redone, some restroom remodels, lots of good things going on to make sure those facilities are up to par and something we can be proud of when people come through. If you haven't been through, I'd encourage you to stop on down and kind of see what we've been up to. Worked hard to try to secure some grants for various items to take the pressure off the budget. Some of those were done through our hazmat materials team. We secured a couple different grants to get equipments we use for our SCBAs. We also secured grants through Dayco's, Nucor Volcraft, Casey's, and Walmart, to name a few. Those totaled right around $15,000 to $20,000 in grants, plus actually. So that was a great thing for us, and it's a good thing for the budget too, to be able to, again, take a little pressure off that. Our fire marshal was hard at work this year. Sean Lindgren and his team of our 3 fire inspectors spent a lot of time doing public education. You know, one number in this chart that concerned me a little bit was our contacts, our public education contacts were down a little bit. That is directly related to the amount of calls we were running. We had several situations where we had a tour scheduled, had a group coming into the station, and calls took us away from those, so we were unable to reschedule. So that definitely had a hand in what we saw in our pub ed. Region 11 Emergency Management, Bobby Reiser and Caitlin stayed busy. We had some shift staff participate in some different drills we did with the community. We've done active threat training in several communities as recently as Plainview here last week, and those have gone over really well. Bobby's done a great job of getting throughout Antelope, Pearson, Madison County and spreading out those trainings and keeping all those folks happy and unified. That's been very important to us. Talked about our medical calls, talked about the paramedic program. In June, we were awarded a silver award for Lifeline EMS. This is for accelerated or basically premier care for stroke and cardiac arrest patients. This is something that one of our lieutenants pursued, and there's lots of boxes you have to check for that. And we are one of few in the state that actually received that award, so I'm very, very proud of that. That speaks to the level of care, the responders we have, and the medical direction we get from Dr. Serber, who hit 50 years this year, and Dr. Andrew Linus, who recently took over as full-time medical director, with Dr. Serber stepping down into the associate medical director, but is very, very involved and still reading our reports and letting us know what we did right and wrong. So that'll never change with Doc. Fire reserves, as I mentioned earlier, continue to be a huge part of what we do. One of the most notable events you see those folks is out at Central Park during National Night Out in August. That's largely a police event. They give us a corner of the park, and we're very grateful to participate in that. Let the kids do water fights amongst other activities. So very enjoyable, and we're grateful that local law enforcement allows us to attend that event. Our new Optimist Firefighter of the Year this year was Ethan Larson, which was very much deserved. We did that before you, the council. Full-time staff, we pinned Adam Smith, Austin Kroger, and Isaiah Swan, who are doing great things for us. Along with adding Caitlin Palmer, who took over for Faith Peterson after 40-plus years of service that Faith provided to the city in the roles of emergency manager, admin assistant, planning commission secretary, amongst others. She did a lot of great things for us, and Caitlin has hit the ground running with that position. We certainly make life busy for her, and she takes it with a grain of salt. Working in our building can be interesting at times, and it takes the right personality, and it's been going good. So all that being said, the thank yous, the people that I want to make sure I don't miss, and I'm sure I'll miss some, all the other divisions in the city that we work with and overlap with, our mutual aid partners in Elkhorn Valley, mutual aid, all the small towns around us that we partner with or are a part of their departments, our administration, obviously you, our mayor and council, our rural board, the citizens of Norfolk, and most importantly, our families. All of our team that's been around any amount of time is realizing that if you don't have a strong supporting cast with your family and or other loved ones, it's pretty hard to be successful. I have that at home. I'm grateful for that with my wife and kids, and it's kind of nice to see that within our building. So that is what I have, and I would entertain any questions you might have for me.
Chief, you said you have another team going in for training in May?
Yes.
How many will be on that team?
For the paramedic program?
Yes.
We have the remaining 3. The goal right now is to send all 3. We have one that just finished up his probationary period, so there's a chance it'll just be 2 of them.
Okay.
And then that last one would get the next go around.
And so how long does it take for the
It's
training?
about a 2-year program.
Okay, okay.
There's certain skills that they can start to do as they progress through the class, so it becomes more vital to the ambulance, but it's about a 2-year program, unless they do the accelerated program that's a little bit shorter. So,
Okay, thank you.
you bet.
What would you say is the reason for the increased calls? Did we expand our criteria of the service? Are we going and doing an extra that we've never done before? Are we sending EMT with the police officers now? Are we doing anything extra that we never did before, or is it just call volume?
It's just call volume, and it's everywhere, whether it's volunteer or full-time. There's nothing, that the last time we had a 300-plus increase in calls, it was right in the thick of COVID. We could point at that and say we've had X amount of calls, COVID, that really impacted our call volume. That went away, and then we saw a couple years where we had maybe a 30, a 40 call increase, and then it started to trickle back up. And there are things like lift assists that we're working with the care facilities here in town to try to get some policies set up to help them not have to utilize our services as much for lift assist. But right now, we're doing as much as we can to help support those facilities. I wouldn't say that that's directly proportionate to the increase we've had. It's just we're busier in every area of response, whether it's fire and or EMS. So. You bet. Thank you, guys.
How are you sitting on personnel, full-time and reserves or volunteers?
Reserves, we have 34, right, Chief? And full-time, we have 31 sworn shift personnel, and then fire marshal, assistant chief, and myself. We are currently in the process of, we've applied for a SAFER grant to add 3 persons. We need the extra personnel. The trends, the last time we added staff, all point towards us needing additional people. We had a couple of our staff who had some injuries this year, but they had to have surgery. That led to 4 to 6 month periods of absence where we had to move people around, and that stings a little bit when you're trying to fill those gaps. So we're very hopeful that that grant will come through and we can get funding for those 3 firefighters for 3 years. So. All right. Any other questions, Mayor?
Think so.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks for the
Chief
support.
Rogge.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. Thanks for everything you guys do and the service you provide. With that, we are adjourned.